Hey, what's up, world? Welcome to another edition of, the special live Black Power Media support broadcast in solidarity with the Black Alliance for Peace action in solidarity with the people of Haiti and the Haitian struggle. I'm Jared Ball. I'll happily be playing host for this, at least for the time being. And as we sit tight and await for word and feedback from those at the rally, the Black Alliance for Peace crew, who are, of course, gathering to keep pressure on the Organization of American States, the United States itself, and that to also be a reminder, I think, to Black communities here in this country and around the world, that the importance of Haiti and the Haitian struggle continues to be a sort of beacon for Pan-African struggle. And they are gathering down at the Haitian embassy today, right now, 2311 Massachusetts Avenue, Washington, D.C., Northwest Washington, D.C., in a rally against the Organization of American States support for the colonization of Haiti. And as I'm sure we'll hear soon enough from the experts there on the ground, and as we've heard already, of course, OAS is largely a functionary of U.S. foreign policy and Western imperial foreign policy, and it allows for sort of an organization of, I believe, I want to say it was, I always get it confused. Was it Teddy or was it Monroe who said Latin America will be this country's backyard? I always get that part confused. I always forget which one of the, anyway. So, and of course, there is this ongoing long time, as we've been hearing here and on our colleagues' show throughout this BPM channel, Haiti continues to be this thorn in the side of the West, as it is, again, a constant reminder of what happens when the enslaved African people rise up and engage in solidarity with one another, and again, through by any means necessary, determine that they will free themselves. And of course, what that has meant throughout the African diaspora. So it continues to be a problem for those in power. And so we want to continue to support and show solidarity for those showing solidarity with that struggle. So what I think we'll do in the meantime, again, is bring up some of our previous discussions on the subject here on the network, as we wait for those who are, again, gathering in DC, and we will, as soon as they jump on to update us, we will bring them on. But I think what we'll do in the immediate is go to some of our previous coverage on the subject and hear from our Black Alliance for Peace colleagues and some others, starting with Dr. Jemima Pierre, as we, again, just await those who are coming through. By the way, before we do that, though, I do want to remind everybody and encourage everybody to please like and share and subscribe. Join the channel if you can. A lot more is coming. Later today, of course, we're going to be talking with Dylan Rodriguez about his new book, White Reconstruction. And just confirmed later this week, Friday afternoon, I'll be talking with Palestinian rights activist and human rights attorney Nora Erakat, and I'm really looking forward to that because for a number of reasons. And in fact, there's going to be some dovetailing in these two conversations. The one coming up later today at 2 p.m. Eastern, right here, that I'll be having with Dylan Rodriguez. and the one Friday afternoon with Nora Ericott, because at least for me selfishly, there's this theme that I'd like to get some clarification on with the both of them in their different ways around Afro-pessimism, which oddly enough, on a small scale level, I have been, again, on a small scale level, I and my crew have been engaged in indirectly without even our knowledge, and in ways that I'll admit from me are a little discomforting. Some misrepresentations, I think, and some misunderstanding on my part, and I think on the part of some others, in terms of certainly where I stand vis-a-vis Afro-pessimism and how I interpret it, and what I think it means in terms of solidarity, specifically with other colonized groups. So this will be pretty interesting. I very much want to get this, cleared up, and for my own sake, and for hopefully for the sake of others. So this will be this interesting thread. In other words, how does Dylan Rodriguez use Afro-pessimism? How does Nora Ericott critique it? And then in what kind of funny way does do interviews previously that I and Doctors Haight and Dr. Burroughs have conducted on our old radio program that have been transcribed and translated and sent all over the world, and have been used and critiqued. And in this one case that we'll talk about on Friday, has come back sort of in a boomerang way to, I think, negatively represent where I am politically and how I interpret Frank Wilderson's work. So anyway, I'm very interested to have all these conversations. So all of that's coming just from my own contribution. Of course, Lukman Nation, Dr. CBS, getting ready to tape her episode number 7 this week, which will air Friday after Lukman Nation. I know Renegade Culture's got some things that are in the pipeline coming. They've already dropped some other new videos. Please make sure you check those out. And again, we are continuing to expand and grow. The subscriptions have been up, so please continue to help that along. And anyway, so a lot more coming. Let me go ahead and get this started, and then I'll stand by and we'll check in with the good folks at Black Alliance for Peace, who are downtown getting this protest on in solidarity of Haiti, which is of course meant to be in a representative, not only fully engaged in legitimate political and material support now, but also defended symbolically for what Haiti continues to represent to the broader Pan-African struggle. So let me go ahead and pull up this previous discussion we had with Jemima Pierre as we get ready maybe to hear from her and some others this morning in our ongoing coverage of, again, the Black Alliance for Peace Solidarity rally happening right now in DC. Look, right on time. It looks like Dr. Pierre is signing in. So let's go ahead and take advantage of the timeliness of that. Dr. Pierre, good morning to you, and thank you for joining me and us in this live coverage of the Solidarity rally, and that Black Alliance for Peace is wrapping up, or has now wrapped up. Among many other things, Dr. Pierre, by the way, for those who are not aware, is a professor in the Department of African American Studies and Anthropology at UCLA, and the author of many things, including a book I'm still working my way through, and I'm excited to invite her back to discuss at some point The Predicament of Blackness, Post-Colonial Ghana and the Politics of Race. So I can't wait to have that discussion another time. But But Dr. Pierre also serves as, I believe it's an international not correspondent, but coordinator for Black Alliance for Peace. Is that also part of your?
And I'm part of I'm a member of the Africa team and now the Haiti team. So we have
okay.
Two teams. Yeah.
Awesome. Sorry about that. Thank you very much for that.
US out of Africa team. Yeah.
So let's start there then, if you would, with the Haitian portion of that, obviously, with what's going on with the rally today. What are your thoughts about the need for such rallies and what the goals should be? And then I'd love to hear how you connect that to your Out of Africa campaign work, or how you see those two campaigns intersect.
Yeah. Definitely. Well, I think, the U.S. is responsible for the complete destabilization of Haitian democracy and the complete loss of Haitian sovereignty over, at least since, from a long time ago, but at least since 2004. And I think as responsible citizens who should, especially as Black people living in the heart of empire, it is our responsibility to actually force the empire to contend with our own dissatisfaction with their imperial machinations outside of the U.S. And I think it's our responsibility as Black people to support, the fight for sovereignty and liberation elsewhere. And so that, I think that's where we're coming from. I do think part of it is, Haiti has lost its sovereignty, and people won't tell you this. We're under occupation since a formal occupation, this latest one since 2004, since the U.S., Canada, France led coup d'etat against, a popular president that was elected, and so we do that. What we want to focus on is actually the imperial machinations, because there are three major groups that make all the decisions in Haiti, that pay for everything, that pay for elections, that do all kinds of things, and I think it's easy to focus on this Black dictator in the making, right? As opposed to thinking about how it is that the U.S., the Organization of American States, which actually is controlled by the U.S. and Canada, and then the United Nations, which has had Haiti under occupation since 2004. What is their role? These major white Western powers, what is their role in Haiti? And how are they continuously supporting dictators, destabilizing democracy, and completely ridding the country of its sovereignty? And so I think that's what we wanted. And I think our next move is to actually protest against, the OAS, against the UN occupation, and then against the US. Right? And I think this is connected directly to our US Out of Africa campaign, because it's ultimately an anti-imperialist campaign, right? And the fact that you have the US military all over the continent, right? And we know our brother Obama, is really the catalyst for, is making AFRICOM, which is the Africa Command, making it stick on the continent, because George Bush couldn't get anybody to do it, but Obama came in as the brother that he is, and did it, right? And so part of it for me is about having, pushing empire from within. And that's our job. We have the responsibility, because we are in the heart of empire, to fight against empire, because the people outside are suffering. They're trying to live and survive. And I actually think there should be protests all over the country about what the US and the UN and the OAS are doing in Haiti. Same as, the same way that I think we should have protests against the bombing of Syria. But, I do think we have a responsibility, is
that. Forgive this detour, but is there something you could share about that beautiful piece of art hanging behind you that seems relevant to the discussion from what I can tell, but
yeah, it's the Haitian Vodou flag, Ogun. And it's handmade. You can tell every single one of these little things were sewn in. And I've had it for about 20 years. And I got it from this artist retreat place in Haiti a long time ago. But yeah, isn't it beautiful? It's a Vodou flag.
It really is. Yeah, sorry. I was a little bit positively
I thought
distracted.
That was better than books, behind me.
It is. I mean, it does quite well. By the way, you brought it up. I mean, I think there is a connection to be made between the current administration's willingness or ability to find the resources and the time and the energy and the focus and the policy development to the extent that there was any to bomb Syria, while not only continuing to support, as you said, the dictator in the making in Haiti, but the ramping up of AFRICOM throughout the continent of Africa, and even the increased policing of Black people, so-called citizens here. And someone in the comments did raise says that well, I'll just pull it. It says, no disrespect intended, but the whole melanated planet is under occupation.
She's right.
So yeah, I mean, so I don't know if I'm just asking you to repeat yourself, or if there is more to say about that connection, this encirclement. I don't know. Anyway.
Well, there's definitely a lot to say. I mean, it is. U.S. empire is actually crazy, right? I mean, the last time we could say, the sun never sets on an empire was when the British ruled the world, right? And I feel, I think that we're almost there, right? Especially the encirclement of Asia, and then the attempt. Because the other thing, actually, to detour a bit, what's happening in Venezuela, we have to really pay attention to, right? Because the first thing Biden did before he even became inaugurated was recognize some dude that wasn't even elected, right? Like Juan Guaido, right? As the president of Venezuela, right? And that's the first thing he does, right? And so part of that is to think about the continuation of U.S. foreign policy in around the world, and that Biden does that. But also when it comes to Black countries, because the second thing that Biden allowed was the continued deportation of Haitians. So within the first month, there've been, I think, almost 30 or 40,000 Haitian refugees and immigrants deported, right? So we think about that, but we also think about the continuation of the funding of the U.S. military police. The other thing that the U.S. did that no one's talked about, they brought in the Colombian police to work with the Haitian police to control Haiti. So this was announced by the U.S. Embassy last week. Now, Colombia is under a right-wing government and is brutal towards its people. And so you think about, okay, so of all the things that you can help this so-called poor country, right? What do you do? You build prisons, you arm their military, and then you bring in another worse country's military, police to come in and subvert Black sovereignty. And so I do think there's that. I do think there's something about U.S. imperialism that as it's reaching its end, because that's what it is, right? It's just it's the last gasp. As it's reaching its end, it's going to wreak havoc all over the world. And we already see it in terms of, all the propaganda against China, the build of the military against China, the attempt to take the oil in Syria. At least Trump said, we're taking the oil, we've got it. Biden is
bomb the oil, take the oil.
Right. And the war in Syria has been illegal from the very beginning. That was Obama. Obama got into this when long before, we had no reason to be bombing Syria, and so I do think there's a link as we're spending all this money, wasting all these money, all these billions and trillions of dollars, killing people. You cannot provide a $15 wage. You want to give the police here more money. You don't give healthcare. You don't give student relief. You don't do anything, right? And so we have to ask ourselves, why is it that the U.S. is more interested in bombing and subverting democracy elsewhere than to taking care of its people? And I think as Black people, we have a responsibility to stop paying fealty, to stop supporting this U.S. government. It's not good for you. It's not good for any of us. And if you have U.S. imperialism abroad and impacting Black people abroad, it will come back home. It always comes back home. Drone warfare, the police, it always comes back home to us. And so we have to be very careful and be very clear and specific about what we want to do. And it's about getting rid of U.S. imperialism.
That Dr. King line, the bombs that drop overseas explode at home.
Exactly. They always come home. They always come home to us. And we have to remember that. We have to remember that. And, the U.S. government has never been for Black people. it was not meant for us. And I hope we recognize that, and fight against it and look for each other. And the other thing is, I know I'm going on and on, but
no, please go ahead.
The other thing I wanted to say is we've always, in this country and elsewhere, depended on connections with Black people abroad, right? We've always depended on support from Black people abroad. And I think we need to give support, well, because there's no way within this world that is globally dominated by white people and the white powers, there's no way we can do anything within the nation framework, right? We have to be global, and we have to go back to the way that we saw colonialism, right? Because right now it's still a colonialism. It's neo-colonialism all over the African continent, the Caribbean, Latin America. So we have to go back to these moments where we see ourselves in this country as an internal colony within this empire, and then reach out to other people who are suffering from neo-colonialism.
Yeah, I forgive me for doing this, but I'm in some way selfishly just looking for your help on this, because I don't like my responses at all to this question or these questions. But when you say, for instance, that it's the responsibility, or you feel that it's the responsibility of Black people to here or elsewhere to feel a concern for Black people elsewhere, how do you convey that? Maybe to the people you deal with on a day-to-day basis, your students, maybe, I don't know, like, for instance, who understandably in many cases are struggling to look beyond their own neighborhoods, in terms of, dealing with I don't know, the vagaries of oppression and in their own lives. So how do you ask people, or what value to their own lives do you think it brings to say, sort of, if you could just lift your head up a little bit higher to see beyond that immediate horizon to other Black people suffering as well, whose support, you would benefit from, and vice versa. I don't know. How do you, other than maybe, like joining organizations like Black Alliance for Peace, et cetera, how do you encourage people to see it, to recognize that importance?
It's an important question, because I always get, well, we're struggling here, and we don't have time, we're trying to eat. And I get it, right? We're trying to eat, and we don't have time to think about what's going on in Haiti or in Uganda or, all over the continent, or in Venezuela. But think about it this way. So why is it that all the money that can support the U.S. citizens is being used to bomb other places to go elsewhere? Like, so first of all, the U.S. state is a racist state. It was born as a racist state. It will always be a racist state, and we will never be full citizens in this country. So let's be clear on that. And I know people have been holding out hope that the U.S. will accept Black people. Let me get out of that one, right? So there's that, right? So, but the other thing is, it is important to point out to people that it has always been international solidarity that's helped us, right? And so I think, for example, the example I give when I teach is, in the 50s and 60s, as African nations were becoming independent, and people in the U.S. were still under Jim Crow, right? And then you had, and I know you're in D.C., so I used to talk to old Africans when I was doing research in D.C., who came during the 50s and 60s, who would say, when they got there, the white people would tell them, stay away from the Black people, and so on and so forth. But the other thing, what they would say also is that the U.S. was embarrassed by the fact, by what it thought that Africans might report about them outside, right? So one of the things that actually sped up desegregation was the fact that you had all these African diplomats walking around D.C., Baltimore, Maryland, getting treated in similar ways as African Americans, getting mistaken for African Americans, and then the U.S. and the propaganda being used by Russia and China against U.S. racism, because the U.S. was so afraid of losing, the war to, the propaganda war to the Soviets or to socialism and communism. So it hastened desegregation, right? In addition, of course, to protest, and of course, we can never downplay protest. But I do think there is something to be said about the fact that this is a nation that does not accept its Black people. And so if we start with that basis, then we have to know that if we make connections, then it really would help us in the long run, because then you'll have help outside, right? And we have to think about all our leaders. I mean, think about Malcolm X, and think about the people. Think about even the Black Panthers and their solidarity networks, right? From Palestine to Tanzania. So we have to think about the fact that Black people have always depended on solidarity across nations, understanding that the nation state doesn't help us. And so I know it's a long-winded way to answer, and it is something I think we do need to, those of us in the US, to really come up with a very good set of a good language to explain to people who are struggling every day, to see how their oppression is linked to oppression of Black people abroad. But the thing I have to also say is, like, look how Black people are treated everywhere. Like, how many Africans drown in the Mediterranean, right? That nobody says anything about, right? How many times does a U.S. drone bomb a Somali town, right? How many Somalis have died, right? And so part of that is we have to remember that these things matter, and that we are Black people, but we also Black people with very long histories of internationalism.
Yeah, I agree with our comrade here, Netfa. Well, Leah also, SODA, hashtag SODA, Solidarity of Dispersed Africans. And then, of course, treatment of Black people within the U.S. explains U.S. foreign policy. As Malcolm said, the police do locally what the military does internationally.
Right.
You can't understand Mississippi if you don't understand the Congo. All of those things still work.
They do. And you have to remember, when the U.S. first occupied Haiti in 1915, it sent soldiers from the South, from the segregated South. And the racism of these soldiers against the Haitians, the thousands of people killed and forced into labor camps. I mean, that's what this country, that's what this country exports, right? Yeah. And if they hate you here, they hate Black people elsewhere too, Yeah. And the other thing is, it's your tax dollars. It is your tax money going to, like, destabilize Haiti and bombing Somalia. So we have to. Yeah, I mean,
that's what I do. I even sometimes just encourage my version of what Dr. John Henrik Clarke used to call the essential selfishness of survival, and saying, listen, you could just simply, the argument could just simply, it's not about, I personally have to love every Haitian or Ugandan or anything, We're not asking for some blind, hand-holding silliness. We're talking about it could be just tactically even. And saying, you could redistribute our tax dollars back to give us national free health care. And then just by that alone, you deplete the resources being used to bomb all these other people.
Right.
Anyway, Dr. Pierre, listen, we do have to go. But as I said, I really do look forward to what I'm just going to keep putting out there positively into the universe is our forthcoming conversation, more specifically about your scholarship. Which I am slowly catching up to and loving every minute of. So anyway, so many questions that I can't wait to get to that. But thank you for this, and thank you for jumping on sort of last minute and helping us do this coverage of BAP's rally today. Thank you for the context.
Yeah, all right. No compromise, no compromise, no retreat. That's how
it.
That does it. That's right.
That's right. No compromise, no retreat. No, anytime, and more in the future. Look forward to it. Take care of yourself.
All right, you too.
All right. All right. Forgive me, everybody, as we continue on here with our live coverage of the right now happening Black Alliance for Peace rally down there at the Massachusetts Avenue, protesting the OAS, or Organization of American States, support for the continued colonization of Haiti. So we wanted to hear there again from the last time we were live, and Dr. Pierre joined us during that, and we are just waiting for the BAP members downtown to jump on with us and give us any updates or any coverage of any of the speeches that are being made. And I just want to again remind you, we're going to in just a moment, we're going to go to an interview we did not too long ago with another Black Alliance for Peace member. Dr. Mamira Prosper and get her thoughts on why we need to stay in support. But just as I'm saying that, we have good morning, Brother Netfoot.
Hey, bro, I just wanted to give you a check-in. We're about to start here. I'm happy to serve as the Black Power media correspondent for this thing. But let me give you a little showing of we're just assembling, and it's a good crowd out here already. It's at least 30 people out here.
Right on.
And we're not even, and we got some good speakers on them too.
I know.
Black Academic Grassroots Movement, PACA, of course, Answer Coalition. Let me.
Right on.
Hey, Rafiki, say some words to Black Power Media. They cover live coverage of Black Power Media. Jared Ball talking to you. He can hear you and see you.
Hey, peace.
Yeah, we out here.
Can you hear me?
We're out here fighting to get the U.S. out of Haiti, to get the U.S.'s hands off of African people in Haiti, in America, in Africa, and everywhere we find ourselves. And we're demonstrating in front of the OAS, the Organization of American States, which supports the U.S. control of the Haitian government and the Haitian economy and the continued oppression of the Haitian people. And we came up here to tell the OAS to get their hands off of Haiti, just like we told the United States to get their hands off of Haiti. And we're telling all these corporations and NGOs that are profiting from the suffering of the people of Haiti to get your bloody hands off of Haiti and let Haiti define its own future and not be defined here. We're in Washington, D.C., where they try to define the future of the people of Haiti. We're against that. Haiti can define their own future and their own life, and the U.S. and the OAS, which is a puppet of the U.S., needs to get their hands off of Haiti.
Did you get that?
You got all of that. That sounded great.
You said got all that. That sounded great. This is a lot of noise out here, but I'm gonna try.
Sounds good to me.
I want to make sure. I'm gonna let you speak to Maria Fernandez of the Malcolm X Grassroots Movement. She's gonna be saying some words. We're on Black Power Media, live coverage of the OAS to Haiti demo. This is Jared Ball talking to you.
Peace. Good morning. What's going on?
We're here with the Malcolm X Grassroots Movement because we are in solidarity with the people of Haiti. This is the people's right to self-determination. We often talk about Haiti as the first free black nation, and we love Haiti, and we must fight for a Haiti that is free. As colonized people here in the United States, we have a responsibility to tear down U.S. imperialism. So we're here with Black Alliance for Peace to be in solidarity with the people of Haiti, both in Haiti, across the island, and here in the U.S. And we say free the land.
Hold up that sign so they can get a good shot of that sign. Can you see that sign good?
Yes, indeed. Looks good. Right on. Thank you very much.
All right. Sorry about the sun.
Nah, man, we appreciate it, man.
Guerrilla reporting. I want to see if I can get my brother Leo Flores to talk to you. He's a good comrade, Venezuelan. Used to work with the embassy too, but now they shut the embassy down. He's here, out here, and the connection between Venezuela and Haiti. Let's step back there a little bit. Come on. He's a humble brother, but he's got mad knowledge and mad commitment. This is Leo Flores. This is you're speaking of Black Power Media, live coverage of the Haiti protests, and they just want to speak to the people. This is live coverage of Black Power Media.
Yeah, I mean, we're here today in front of the OAS.
Yeah, go ahead.
And the OAS, as you probably know, has a long history of interference in Latin America and the Caribbean, and it's been nowhere worse than in Haiti. In Haiti, they've overturned election results. They placed a third place candidate basically into a runoff election and made sure that he would win. That was Moise's predecessor, Martelly. They sign off on fraudulent elections in Haiti all the time when the U.S.-backed candidates win, and when there's any kind of suggestion that a popular candidate, someone who represents the actual people, might win, then the OAS and the U.S. go into overdrive to ensure that that doesn't happen. I'm from Venezuela, and in Venezuela we know, or at least the revolutionary Venezuelans know, what Haiti means to all of Latin America and the Caribbean, because Haiti was the first to gain independence. And it wasn't just independence like we had in the U.S., where one master was replaced with another. It was a true people's revolution in Haiti. And not only that, but Haiti helped Venezuela escape or become independent from the Spanish Empire. Venezuela and 7 other countries that were liberated by Simón Bolívar. Haiti not only provided ideological and kind of moral support, it provided material support in the shape of ships and troops and guns that fought for the independence of people all over Latin America. That's why I'm really proud today as a Venezuelan to be here, standing in solidarity with the Haitian people and denouncing the OAS. The OAS has been trying to carry out a coup in Venezuela. The OAS have backed a coup in Bolivia. The OAS that's trying to manipulate elections next month in Ecuador. And the OAS that's propping up Jovenel Moïse in Haiti right now.
Right on.
Thank you, brother.
Right on.
All right. I think when they get started, I'm gonna try to angle myself. I don't have one of them sophisticated, what do you call it, tripods or anything like that.
Yeah, hey, we appreciate it. It all sounds, it looks good. It all sounds, it looks good.
Okay. I'm gonna point the on that djembe is Alfonso Coles, longtime comrade.
That is indeed the mighty Mos Def we just heard a minute ago. I want to say, is that Latifah?
I think so, yeah.
This is the pre-Revlon days, Latifah?
That's gonna shake up the view a little bit when you make me laugh.
No, hey, we really appreciate what you're doing. That for Black Alliance
and free Equalizer. You know she's on the Equalizer now, right?
Say that again.
Now she's playing the Equalizer on that TV show.
That's right. That's right.
Like, Lord have mercy.
She went from Ladies First and Fists in the Air to Revlon to Jazz to the Cops. But it's all good. We appreciate how she sounds in this rally, though.
The people. Here you go. Talk to Jared Bond, Black Power Media.
Oh, beautiful. We're out here. We need to free Haiti because I've gotten my education from NETFA, and I don't think I fully understood the U.S. complicity, Biden's support for what has been going on in Haiti, which is very interesting because we just had a president who refused to leave office, but apparently that's okay in Haiti, but not okay in America.
Hey, tell Jared about some of the other coverage you've been doing. It kind of connects because on the same, you was just doing.
Yesterday we had some protests on the anniversary of Breonna Taylor. We covered that. There have been protesters out here for over 9 months, young protesters, 18, 19, 20, 21 years old, post George Floyd. The world doesn't know that these protests are still going on. that these protests have been happening for every day for a while, but then every week, 9 months later, and that the events of January 6th could have been predicted by the protesters in these streets because they already faced the neo-Nazis in November, December, not to mention fighting police violence back right here in DC.
Right on.
So
Thanks,
that's
Chuck.
what's been going on. And just because the Washington Post doesn't cover it doesn't mean it's not happening. That's what's important. There's a media blackout, not just to Haiti, but what's going on right here in Washington, D.C. with regards to George Floyd, police violence, state violence, whether it's abroad or whether it's at home, it's the same media response.
Right on. Thanks, Chuck.
Yeah, and you know, there's a what Chuck just was talking about. There's an interview and counterpunch that somebody did with Jamu Baraka recently, and it made me think of Chuck right away, because in it he talks about how the coalescence and the coalescence between Silicon Valley and the state and the ruling class, and how they are leveling a new neo-fascism. A neo-fascism, not a new neo, that's redundant, but a neo-fascism that actually is has also sought to malign people's journalists like Chuck, like us, you know, like what we've been trying to do, so to confine the arenas of ideological discourse and thought. And so that's what I see, you know, this stuff that we're covering right now with Haiti and all that. One, we don't even get the massive demonstrations in Haiti that are happening. We don't hear nothing about that. But now we don't even hear about what's happening in the U.S. They don't want us to connect the dots. They don't want us to make concrete connections between our people. But we're going to do it in spite. We're going to keep the show up. And they had what they called what was considered maybe a unintended consequence with this internet stuff that connected us, and even the pandemic in a lot of ways, because we started making connections across international lines that we weren't able to make it before. They're going to start. I'm gonna give you I'm gonna show you what they.
Good afternoon, y'all. How y'all doing?
Great.
Thank you so much for coming out this afternoon.
Sorry, hold on.
Folks can definitely circle around, or if you want to be in the street so folks can see the signs. We are still in a global pandemic, so we try to navigate with the best precautions that we can. So, you know, try to be in a consensual relationship when you're around folks. Dope. So we're gonna first start out with a poem, and then we'll introduce our group, and then we have a list of speakers, some political education, some music, some chants. So thank y'all for coming out. Can we give it up for our sister Abina?
Good afternoon, everyone. Thinking about what's going on in Haiti and all around the world, how it's affecting people. But I really think about our children all the time, how many of them are suffering and having to grow up in the state that it's in. So I'm going to do this poem about the children, and it's called Concrete Babies. Concrete babies, walking through wombs of moms, carrying torches, looking for freedom through the marble eyes of a microwave generation. Beep, beep, they want it right now. Beep, beep, it's already there. You see, playgrounds used to be grass and trees with tires hanging from trees, swinging high, swinging low to earth's vibrations. Now solid, covered in concrete with playground scraping knees. You see, concrete babies just get up and sit motionless before technology's eyes entering into cyberspace. Who's watching who? Who's watching who? Concrete babies, walking through rooms of moms, carrying torches, looking for freedom through the marble eyes of a microwave generation. Beep, beep, they want it right now. Beep, beep, it's already there. You see, playgrounds used to be grass and trees with tires hanging from trees, swinging high, swinging low to earth's vibrations. Now dead, solid, covered in concrete with playgrounds, scraping knees. You see, concrete babies just get up and sit motionless before technology's eyes, entering into cyberspace. Who's watching who? Delete. Who's watching who? Completely delete. You see, saving is not really saving for you. It's in the backup folder for Big Brother to use when you fly high to bring you back down to his every need. Cancerous babies, toxic waves of technology and sunken faces. Who's going to save our babies? Who's going to save the babies? Priests breaking vows to seduce and abuse children, fighting wars at 10, 11, and 12 years old. Full-blown AIDS babies, incest and molestation. Tell me, who's gonna save our babies? You see, the innermost thoughts of my mind sometimes seems to wander from time to time to places I've never been but seek to find. And even if I love you less, it would still be more than you know. Ayiwobo, Ayiwobo, Ayiwobo. And Ayiwobo, spoken in Haiti, is Creole and it means hallelujah. Help our children. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. We do this for our children and those who are yet to come, in honor and in the legacy of the Black radical tradition and all those ancestors who have come before us, all those who are still laying the groundwork. As you see, we are in an intergenerational space. We got folks, Gen Z, we got millennials, we got, what comes after that? I'm joking, because I really can't remember. But yes, I'm going to pass it to Erica with Black Alliance for Peace to kind of introduce the organization and why we're out here. Give it up for Erica. Peace, peace, peace. No compromise, no retreat. No compromise, no retreat. No compromise, no retreat. No compromise, no retreat. So I just want to talk about why we're out here at OAS. As you know, Black Alliance for Peace is a Black-led, anti-war, anti-imperialist organization looking to bring back that politics to the Black radical tradition into the movement. And we're here at OAS primarily because we want to draw attention to what OAS is doing in Haiti. We want to make sure that people understand that it's more than Moise. There's a whole structure and entities backing him, which means that we can get rid of Moise, but they will still exist in Haiti. Sorry. So I just want to, you can read on the fact sheet about what the OAS is, but I just want to talk about the OAS and its relationship to Haiti. The OAS has worked as an extension of U.S. power in Haiti. It is part of the core group in an unleashed group of foreign governments and institutions. The U.S., UN, France, Canada, Brazil, Germany, Spain, and the European Union. Members of the core group have appointed themselves as the arbiters of Haitian politics and economics, while serving as the observers of the ongoing de facto military occupation of Haiti by United Nations forces. While the OAS's charter expressly states that it should not interfere in the internal jurisdiction of member states, the organization has directly intervened in Haitian elections in 2010 and 2015-2016. Most recently, the OAS has supported the presidency of Moise. Right-wing OAS Secretary General Luis Almagro issued a statement affirming Moise's illegal claims that his term ends in February of 2022 rather than February 2021, as stipulated by the Haitian Constitution and as affirmed by Haitian civil society. OAS interference in Haiti's election on behalf of the U.S. has contributed to the current constitutional and political crisis. And that's why we're out here. Black Alliance for Peace is protesting the OAS for its imperialist meddling in Haiti's politics and democratic process, for its forceful curtailment of Haitian sovereignty, and for its effort and undercutting Haitian self-determination as a way of supporting U.S. interests. The OAS gives cover to the ongoing neocolonial indirect rule of Haiti under the guise of supporting democracy and its acts in service of white supremacists, U.S.-led imperial order. We must hold the OAS accountable for continuing crisis in Haiti and demand that it stops its choking Haiti sovereignty. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. We could do a chant. I don't know the rhythm of this, but if folks have a chant sheet, should have been passed out. If folks can pass out the chant sheet so everyone can follow along throughout the program. So this chant is called No to the Core Group. And it says, the core group in Haiti, we say no. The OAS and US have got to go. The core group in Haiti, we say no. The OAS and US have got to go. The core group in Haiti, we say no. The OAS and US have got to go. So I can say the core group in Haiti, and then y'all can repeat. So the core group in Haiti, we say no. The OAS and US have got to go. All right, we're gonna try that one more time. I know it's a mixed crowd out here, so I'm really leaning on the Black folks in the space to carry the rhythm. So the core group in Haiti,
we say no.
The OAS and US have got to go. Okay, we got. The core group in Haiti, we say no. Okay, yes. This is gonna be the last time, and I'm really hoping we catch this rhythm. I really need folks to say that OAS and US have got to go also, okay?
Say the whole.
Have to go, okay.
Maybe that's
all right, you know.
Sorry, I didn't have anybody.
No, it's fine. I can catch the, beat. Okay.
That's fine.
The core group in Haiti, we say no. The OAS and US have to go. All right. Thank you.
Oh, yeah, that's good.
So I'm going to introduce our actually I'm going to do, I did this last time. I'm going to do a moment of silence for all those who have lost their lives to state violence in one shape or the other. Also all the ancestors who are here. So just if you want to raise any names up in the space, feel free to name the names for the next minute. Thanks, y'all. So our next speaker is Joe with Occupation Free DC. Well, I'll have Joe talk about Occupation Free DC. Okay.
Hello.
Hey, y'all. Can everybody hear me all right?
Yes.
Awesome. Hope everyone's doing well this afternoon. I'd like to start off by saying that we are on occupied, unceded Piscataway land. And not only that, but Black people are being pushed out of the city due to the neo-colonialism that is gentrification. This land has been stewarded by so many non-white people over the years, over the millennia, and this land is not mine. I just want to honor that before I start speaking today. So I want to start off by saying I'm from Occupation Free DC, also known as OFDC. It's an abolitionist group working to end the deadly exchange of police between here in DC and the Israeli military and police, which I can talk more about. Oh, sorry. So I'm here today because I am demanding an end to American imperialism in the Caribbean and elsewhere. When Black people in the US talk about anti-imperialism, we often get told that we need to stick to domestic issues. When Dr. King spoke out against the war in Vietnam, he was told the same thing. But I know that global solidarity is a necessary part of my liberation and it's a necessary part of ending anti-Blackness everywhere. My family is Jamaican, and I grew up in a tight-knit Afro-Caribbean community just outside of Atlanta. That community let me know about the real, tangible effects of American imperialism from an early age. I know descendants of Black laborers on the Panama Canal who could tell stories passed down to them from grandparents and great-grandparents about the brutality of the Canal Zone. I know people who are my mother's age. They're not even elders who can remember and tell us about the U.S. invasion of Grenada in 1983. And I have friends and family friends who are Haitian and Haitian American, whose recent ancestors were pushed out of Cuba and the Dominican Republic due to anti-Blackness and American capitalist interests. And American imperialism is not limited to the Caribbean. Every year, Congress approves billions of our tax dollars to go to the apartheid state that is Israel for so-called security and for apparently protecting democracy in the region. Israeli police and military use this money to kill, maim, imprison, and psychologically torture Palestinians every single day. Not only that, but police forces across the country, from Los Angeles to right here in DC, go on deadly exchange trips where they learn racist and just terrible tactics from Israeli military and police forces. They have stops at Shin Bet, which is the Israeli version of the CIA, where they learn all sorts of riot control and so-called counterterrorism tactics that they use right here to use against Black protesters. So, you know, when they just blare their sirens and flash their lights at protests, like from police cars, they learned that in Israel. All that type of mess they learned in Israel. So they learned a lot of those strategies from an apartheid regime on our dime. When Dr. King spoke out against imperialism 54 years ago, he said, "We are confronted with the fierce urgency of now." And I know that's still true when it comes to ending Western imperialism in Haiti and beyond. When Joe Biden was running for president, they said we had to wait to bring our demands to him until he got elected. When he got elected president, they said we had to wait until he was in office. And once he got put in office, they said we had to wait until after the first 100 days of his administration. Well, I think that's a mess. We are confronted with the fierce urgency of now because Haitians are suffering under a U.S.-backed dictatorship right now. We are confronted with the fierce urgency of now because our tax dollars are supporting authoritarianism in Palestine and Haiti and a lot of other places right now. And we are confronted with the fierce urgency of now because Haitians are being deported right now. There's so much more that I can say about this egregious injustice, but I'm gonna end by saying that we need to band together and demand hands off Haiti from right now until Haitians are allowed to determine their own future without American or Western interference. Thank you. Woo! Woo! Thank you, Joe. So as Erica said, we are out here with Black Alliance for Peace. We did have a sign-up sheet, but instead of passing it around, we want folks to go to this website, which I'm going to say throughout, and there's going to be also folks walking around telling you, but it's bit.ly/BAP, B-A-P, Haiti sign. And there you can sign up to stay in contact with us and also give us your information so we can let you know when our next event is. And I'll keep saying that throughout, but it's bit.ly, so bit.ly /BAP Haiti sign, SIGN. So as Joe said, there's also a crisis at the border that has been going on for decades. And last week in San Diego, there was mass deportation of Haitians under the administration of Biden. And so as Joe said, it doesn't matter if it's a Democrat, it doesn't matter if it's a Republican, they all join together to push U.S. imperialism. So our next speaker is Max Rameau from PACA. And I'll let Max introduce himself.
Thank you. My name is Max Rameau, and I am with an organizer with Pan-African Community Action, or PACA. I was born in Haiti, and as a result of the Duvalier dictatorship there, which was supported by the United States government with economic support and military support, My parents were forced to flee Haiti when I was very young, and that's why I was raised in the U.S. I did go back to Haiti during summers, but my father was not able to go back to Haiti for more than 20 years before he was able to. It was almost 20 years before he was able to go back. We are here in front of the OAS because the United States, and across from the White House, because the United States government and international organizations such as the OAS are undermining democracy in countries like Haiti in order to prop up dictators that provide the United States and multinational corporations with financial benefits, with wealth. And the organizations like the OAS were created explicitly to promote human rights and promote democracy. And yet they consistently fight against human rights and fight against democracy anytime it goes against the financial interests of wealthy people and wealthy corporations. In particular, the one who is occupying power right now in Haiti, Moïse, was elected to a 5-year term. And his 5-year term, by most experts, expired on February 7th, 2021. However, he is arguing, and the United States and the OAS are supporting the idea that he should actually get to stay till 2022 instead of 2021. Of course, what happened was there was an election in 2015. It's a 5-year term in Haiti. There was an election in 2015, and he was supposed to be sat on February 7th, 2021. And that would make 5 years this time. That would make 5 years in February 2021. At the runoff, however, no one won outright. So there was a runoff election. The runoff election was postponed because of political violence. And many people think that it was postponed intentionally in order to help Moïse win. But the election was postponed until 2016, and he was then seated in office in 2017. And that's why they're arguing his term actually expires in 2021. However, in any country, when they talk about the rule of law, they mean that individuals have to comport themselves to the Constitution, that the Constitution doesn't contort itself to the individual. So if there's a term that starts at this date and ends at another date, then even if the election is postponed, the person still has to, the office still has those exact same dates. And this is this exact argument that people in Haiti are making right now, that the term actually ended in 2021, is the identical argument that the OAS was making in 1994. In 1990, Haiti had a major election, and with overwhelming support, Aristide was elected president in 1990. He was then forced from power in a coup in 1991, just months after he took office. He was in office for less than a year. And that coup was supported by the US government and supported by the OAS. And when Aristide was out of power for a while, that was under George H.W. Bush, the first George Bush president, he was then returned to power in a weakened state by President Bill Clinton in 1994. And when Aristide returned to power in 1994, was returned to power by the US government in 1994, Aristide argued he should get to finish his term. He was in for a few months, and he was coming back in at the end of his term. He would have only had a few months left in office, and he argued he should get a full 5-year term. And not only did many of his supporters, most of Aristide's own supporters, said, no, it is more important for you to follow the Constitution than it is for you to get your 5-year term. But the United States government made it a condition of his returning that he does not get to do 5 years. He has to end his term. Even though he was out for the majority, he was actually in office for just over a year total. The United States government, the OAS, insisted that he could not go back to Haiti and take the position that he was elected to unless he agreed that the Constitution wouldn't change to fit him, he would change to fit the Constitution. And these same organizations now, the OAS and the US, are arguing that this guy should get to stay in office a year after his term ends. This is the way the OAS and the US government twist the meaning of democracy to fit whatever their needs are. They want a dictator in power, and they're willing to change the meaning of the Haitian Constitution in order to make sure that they have a dictator. This is not acceptable by democratic standards. This is not acceptable by the majority of people in Haiti, and this should not be allowed to stand. This is the reason organizations like the OAS were started, was to end this type of abuse, not to perpetuate it on a global scale. We demand that the OAS and the US end their imperialist efforts in Haiti and other countries across the world.
Thank you. Thank you.
Am I angling this right?
I saw it. I really did.
Yeah, it looks good, man. Everything looks good. Thank you.
Thank you so much for providing that history and that personal narrative. Shout out to this Haitian flag in the back. So, just want to let folks know there is more signs there that have some really powerful messages. So we'd love for folks to grab signs that are on that bench right there. And if you want to hold signs behind the speakers, that would also be good so folks on the street can see it. And also for those who are not here, who are watching on camera, could know why we're here and what we're talking about. And shout out to TL Co. We also have some food and drinks to the left, so if you want to grab something while you're here. And hand sanitizer. So we're going to do a chant before we get to the next speaker. And I'm going to do it once and then want y'all to repeat. So it goes, the core group in Haiti the core group in Haiti is white supremacy. The OAS in Haiti is white supremacy.
I'm sorry.
You know, when you write something down, you haven't practiced it yet, so it comes out differently. Like that differently came out. So it's gonna go, the core group in Haiti is only white supremacy. The OAS in Haiti is only white supremacy.
Oh, maybe I.
Haiti is only white supremacy.
The OAS in Haiti is only white supremacy. The core group in Haiti is only white supremacy. The OAS in Haiti is only white supremacy. The core group in Haiti is only white supremacy. The OAS in Haiti is only white supremacy.
The core group in Haiti is only white supremacy. Core group in Haiti is only white supremacy.
The core group in Haiti is only white supremacy. The core group in Haiti is only white supremacy. The OAS in Haiti is only white supremacy. The OAS in Haiti is only white supremacy. All right, we got this.
Last night when I was tired.
So our next speaker is Rafiki Morris with AAPRP, who will drop some gems and knowledge. About 2 weeks ago, we had another rally at the Haitian Embassy down the street from here, and it was raining, and Rafiki did a lot of work to make sure it didn't rain on us. So I'm going to keep uplifting that because it's really important. Because if you know the history of Haiti, you know that there's always a spiritual component to this. And there's always forces that we don't know of that are also at work to empower Black people to exercise self-determination and know that they can continue the legacy of Haiti, which is to defeat colonizers. So that is a spiritual also thing.
All right, how y'all doing? All right, my name is Rafiki Morris. I'm an organizer with the All African People's Revolutionary Party and a member of the coordinating committee of the Black Alliance for Peace. And I'm also representing, I saw one of our members out here, the Maryland Council of Elders. I guess people who know me would think it's funny I'm being introduced as the spiritual influence and all this. But I will get with that. What I like to do today is try to put some of what we're doing into some context. Because we hear a lot about history and we don't know the role of people in history. And so we need to understand, especially when we're involved in a historical moment. Today is, in fact, a historical moment. Today, some people, for the first time, have found out about the U.S. government and the Organization of American States complicity in the suffering of the people of Haiti. And that people are finding out what is happening to other people in other parts of the world is historical, it's important, and it's necessary. And we should mark this moment. Today is also the day that we who are gathered here let the people of Haiti know that we stand with you and not with them. We don't care if it's Trump or if it's Biden. We are against U.S. imperialism. And Trump was an imperialist and Biden was an imperialist. In fact, Biden is a long-standing imperialist, a long-standing murderer, a long-standing proponent of war against Black people around the world. He was in office with that Obama regime that destroyed our brother Muammar Gaddafi and turned Tripoli into a pile of rocks. It was a crime against humanity. And Biden did that. Obama did that. The Democrats did that. And some of us are still running around here thinking it's a difference between a Republican and a Democrat. Well, Malcolm X told us that's the government. That's who's in the government, the Republicans and the Democrats. So when this government does something against humanity like they're doing in Haiti now, and like they have been doing in Haiti for the last 200 and some odd years, that's your government. That's the people you elected, the people you voted for. I ain't gonna call you stupid, but I didn't vote for them. I've been talking to y'all who did vote for them and trying to get you to explain to me why. So we had to put it in some kind of context. They came to Africa and they started a war to extract people like me. And they dropped some of them in Haiti. They dropped some of them in the U.S. They dropped some of them in Brazil. They dropped some of them in Trinidad. And then they enslaved those people. And then they played a game and made us think that we was independent. But we ain't independent because they still control the purse strings of our society. They still control the food that we eat, the clothes that we wear, the education that we receive, the kind of governments that we get. And if we don't do what they say, they shoot guns at us. They kill us. They oppress us and they murder us. It's the same people doing it in Haiti that's doing it right here in Washington, D.C. There ain't no difference. There ain't no difference. The guns that they got in Haiti is the same guns that your police force is carrying around here in Washington, D.C. The tear gas that they sprayed on you when you demanded that Black Lives Matter is the same tear gas that they spraying on the people of Haiti to keep them from fighting for a government that represents them. So we have to understand the context that we're in. We're at a historical moment and we're fighting to get on the other side of this history. We're fighting so that the people of Haiti are on the other side of imperialism, or on the other side of capitalism, on the side where they themselves can grow the food that they need, where they themselves can define the development for Haiti and the people of Haiti. But that all is going to come after we defeat imperialism, after we stop neocolonialism, after we shut down the Organization of American States. I know we just here to talk about what they're doing in Haiti, but we need to be talking about shutting them down. Shutting them down. That's the enemy right there. You look over there. You see that tall building, that phallic symbol reaching up to the sky? That's the enemy right there. The White House is right down the street. That's the enemy right there. These are the people responsible for what's happening in Haiti. It ain't Moise. He's a puppet. He's a sucker. He's on somebody's payroll. He's doing what he told to do. But the people who's telling them, they inside that building right there. They in the White House. They in the Congress. They even running your city government because all of it is that's the government, right? That's the government. Am I making sense? Because y'all got quiet all of a sudden.
I know, need to applaud.
I don't know if I'm stepping on somebody's toes, but I just need to get them out the way because we coming with the truth.
Clap it up, clap it
Coming
up.
with the truth. Neo-colonialism, this new colonialism, some people call it neoliberalism, some people call it globalization. All of that is the same thing. And we all are suffering from it. And we got to do one thing to bring it to the end. And that is to organize. 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 We're never tired of saying it. What we need is organization. We need to come together. And we need to plan how we going to tear it down. Tear it down. Tear it down. Don't adjust neo-colonialism, destroy it. Don't change imperialism, destroy it. Don't reform capitalism, wipe it off the face of the earth, and let's make a life for the people of our planet. We are with you, Haiti. We are with you. It's one fight, and we are in this fight until the end. Thank you very much. And as always, we stand ready for the revolution.
Thank you. Thank you. So we have about 4 or 5 more speakers, and then we're going to open up. But before we do that, Erica is going to. Were you able to connect it? Okay. Erica's going to play. Or you want to explain? Hi. So I want to talk quickly about Mumia Abdul-Jabbar for a moment. Yesterday, I had the great privilege to post something where I was able to show some support for what's happening with Mumia. If you are not aware, Mumia has COVID-19 and congestive heart failure. He's gravely sick, and we want Mumia home. So we want him home. We're fighting to get him home. And I just wanted to lift Mumia up in this moment because Mumia has been a strong supporter of Haiti. He has always supported Haiti. He understands the history and the connection of Haiti to the Black people here in America. He understands the colonization that we all are facing. And I just want to play a speech, well, not a speech, but something that he spoke about in 2013 during Black August when he talked about Haiti and the revolution.
Free Mumia!
Free Mumia!
Free Mumia!
Free Mumia! Free Mumia! Free Mumia!
Mumia will be free. Mumia will be free.
Mumia will be free.
Mumia will be free.
Mumia will be free.
Mumia will be free.
Mumia will be free.
Black August 2004 for Kilo Nyasha. The Honorable Frederick Douglass, former U.S. Minister to Haiti, among other things, said back in January of 1893 the following. Among these large bodies, the little community of Haiti, anchored in the Caribbean Sea, has had her mission in the world, and a mission which the world had much need to learn. She has taught the world the danger of slavery and the value of liberty. In this respect, she has been the greatest of all our modern teachers, he said. It was a sweaty, steaming night in August when a group of Africans gathered in the forest of Mont Rouge in the South. It was August 1791. Among these men was a voodoo priest, Papalois Boukman, who preached to his brethren about the need for revolution against the cruel slave drivers and torturers who made the lives of the African captives a living hell. His words, spoken in the common tongue of Creole, would echo down the annals of history and cannot fail but move us today, 213 years later. He said, "The God who created the sun, which gives us light, who rouses the waves and rules the storm, though hidden in the clouds, he watches us. He sees all that the white man does. The God of the white man inspires him with crime, but our God calls upon us to do good works. Our God, who is good to us, orders us to revenge our wrongs. He will direct our arms and aid us. Throw away the symbol of the God of the whites, who has so often caused us to weep, and listen to the voice of liberty, which speaks in the hearts of us all. The rebellion of August 1791 would eventually ripen into the full-fledged Haitian Revolution, lead to the liberation of the African Haitian people, to the establishment of the Haiti Republic, and the end of the dreams of Napoleon for a French-American empire in the West. 2 centuries before the revolution, when the island was called Santo Domingo by the Spanish Empire, historian Antonio de Herrera would say of the place, quote, "There is so many Negroes in this island as a result of the sugar factories that the land seems in effigy or in image of Ethiopia itself," unquote. Haiti was the principal source of wealth for the French bourgeoisie. In the decade before the Boukman Rebellion, an estimated 29,000 African captives were imported to the island annually. Conditions were so brutal and the work was so backbreaking that the average African survived only 7 years in horrific sugar factories. In 1804, Haiti declared independence after defeating what was the most powerful army of the day, the Grand Army of France. Haiti's founding father, Jean-Jacques Dessalines, at the Haitian Declaration of Independence proclaimed, quote, "I have given the French cannibals blood for blood. I have avenged America," unquote. With their liberation, Haitians changed history, for among their accomplishments, 1, it was the first independent nation in Latin America. 2, it became the second independent nation in the Western Hemisphere. 3, it was the first Black republic in the modern world. And 4, it was the only incident in world history of an enslaved people breaking their chains and defeating a powerful colonial force using military might. What did independence bring? It brought the enmity and anger of the Americans, who refused to recognize their southern neighbor for 58 years. In the words of South Carolina Senator Robert Hayne, the reasons for U.S. non-recognition were clear. He said, "Our policy with regard to Haiti is plain. We never can acknowledge her independence. The peace and safety of a large portion of our union forbids us even to discuss it." In many ways, Black August, at least in the West, begins in Haiti. There's the blackest August possible, revolution and resultant liberation from bondage. For many years, Haiti tried to pass the torch of liberty to all of her neighbors, providing support for Simón Bolívar in his nationalist movements against Spain. Indeed, from its earliest days, Haiti was declared an asylum for escaped slaves and a place of refuge for any person of African or American Indian descent. On January 1st, 1804, President Dessalines would proclaim, "Never again shall colonist or European set foot on this soil as master or landowner. This shall henceforward be the foundation of our Constitution." It would be U.S., not European imperialism that would consign the Haitian people to the cruel reign of dictators. The U.S. would occupy Haiti and impose their own rules and dictates. After their long and hated occupation, Haitian anthropologist Ralph Triot would say it improved nothing and complicated almost everything. Yet that imperial occupation does not wipe out the historical accomplishments of Haiti. During the darkest nights of American bondage, millions of Africans in America, in Brazil, in Cuba, and beyond could look to Haiti and dream. For Black August, this is Mumia Abu Jamal.
Mumia Abu Jamal, brick by brick, wall by wall, we're gonna free Mumia Abu Jamal.
Brick by brick, wall by wall, we're gonna free Mumia Abu Jamal. Brick by brick, wall by wall, we're gonna free Mumia Abu Jamal. No compromise, no retreat. No compromise, no retreat. No compromise, no retreat.
No compromise, no
Woo!
Hey, my phone is fast running out of power, so I don't know how long it's
Yeah,
gonna
this
do
is so
this.
clear, right?
It's all good. We're here. If anybody else wants to join the stream and take over for you, let us know.
Yeah,
Otherwise, we'll just stand by.
Maybe we'll have
I'm gonna have
Rebecca.
to I'm gonna let you hear Rebecca, my comrade from Paka, and then I'm gonna have to cut the phone off and find somebody for you because I can't stay. I'll find somebody.
Right on, right on.
Yeah, warm or cold? Which one? So my name is Rebecca Bonholm. I'm with Pan African Community Action, aka PACA. Also a member organization with BAP, Black Alliance for Peace. Shout out to the sign language interpreter right here doing his thing. Right. And so I'm gonna try and keep my comments brief. So like Mamuya was saying, we need to learn, for those of us, I don't know how many of y'all know about the true history of Haiti and the historical history and the current history of what's going on right now. But I want to start by recommending some resources. Hold it like this. Yeah, I hear myself now too. Y'all hear me? All right, no compromise, no retreat. No compromise, no retreat. No compromise, no retreat. No compromise, no retreat. All right, now that y'all can hear me, let's start over. So I want to recommend some resources to start off with, and I encourage other people who have, real, true resources about what the history of Haiti and what's going on in Haiti to share with it. And I don't know how many of people that are here knows about it, but if you know about it, please share it with people that might not know, right? So there are two movies, documentaries that I would encourage people to go ahead and watch. One is called 1804, The Hidden History of Haiti, which was, I guess, was available in 2017. It's about a 2-hour film documentary that talks about the history of Haiti and the relationship that it has to the U.S. and all of the other in the world, really. And then there's another documentary called Haiti Betrayed, which came out in 2019, which kind of talks about the current situation in Haiti, as well as the how the U.S. kind of was in cahoots with Canada, because it's not just the U.S. It's not just the U.S. that has its imperialist hands on Haiti. U.S. is in collaboration with a lot of countries, including Canada. So if you want to learn more about what is going on with Haiti and why Haiti is the way that it is now, please, I recommend that you go and watch those videos. Right now, those films, right now, it's not free because I guess we talking about Haiti, and let's be real, we in a capitalist state, so they're trying to make money off of all of us, but it's important for y'all to know the true history and why Haiti is the way that it is right now, right? Right. All right, good. So now I really want to go into Pan-Africanism and why it's so important that as Africans, wherever we are, it's important to be in solidarity with Haiti and any other Africans that are struggling for their liberation and self-determination, right? The Haitian motto, it's on the flag, says "L'union fait la force," which basically means unity makes L'union fait la force, which is unity is force. This is why we're here today. We're here to be in solidarity with the Haitian people in Haiti and wherever they are. A little bit more about myself. I was born in Haiti. My parents came to the U.S. from Haiti in the 1980s, right around when the Duvalier dictatorship was going on in Haiti. So I'm very connected to what has and continues to be going on in Haiti. Right? Let's back to Pan-Africanism. It's important for African people to be politically educated and organized about all of our struggles that is occurring in the U.S., in Haiti, and wherever else African peoples are, right? And in order to do that, we need to start with Haiti. Haiti was the first, one of the ways that we can do that is to study the Haitian Revolution. Haiti was the first Black republic to win its independence from an imperialist country, the France, who definitely was backed by the U.S. and other imperialist powers. My glasses is fogging up, y'all. I gotta take it off. And so, where was I? And so I'm getting all excited. And so we need to realize that Haiti is just another example of what's going on in the U.S., what's going in the Caribbean, what's going in Europe nations, because wherever Black people are, they're struggling for their self-determination and liberation. And then if we stand up for Haitians, if we, just like we stand up for movements here, like Black Lives Matters and other movements, we are telling the U.S. imperialist powers that we are not gonna back down. No compromise, no retreat. No compromise, no retreat, right? And so political education and us being organized as Africans in the U.S. and in solidarity with other African nations and peoples all around the world is important. White folks that are in solidarity with us, because I know there's some white folks here that is not here for our liberation, right? Right. White folks, I encourage y'all to go out and organize your people. Organize them and tell them the truth, the real truth about Haitian, the Haitian Revolution and the Haitian people, and why they continue to fight for their liberation. Why, quote unquote, according to the the corporate media, why they are the quote unquote poorest country in the Western Hemisphere, right? Please go organize your people. We got our people, and that way we will be able to see a world that we want to live in, which is the ability to have power to determine our destiny and what safety looks like. No compromise, no retreat. No compromise, no retreat. No compromise, no retreat. I want to read some of these posters that we have out here. We have one that says U.S. out of Haiti. Repeat after me. U.S. out of Haiti. Hands off IET.
Hands off IET.
We stand with Haiti and neo-colonial meddling.
And neo-colonial meddling.
Free Mamuya.
Free Mumia.
Free Mamuya.
Free Mumia.
No compromise, no retreat.
No compromise, no retreat.
Free all political prisoners.
Free all political prisoners.
Free all my niggas. Free everybody. Thank you for making it clear, because I was gonna be like, yes, Pan-Africanism. Mumia mentioned it. We all mentioned it. Wherever we are, we need to be in solidarity. So I gave the wrong bit.ly link.
All right, let me recruit somebody else. I also got to make a couple. All right,
it's all good, man. We're good, man. Whoever can do it, have them hop on. Otherwise, we're here.
Okay, I'll be back.
All right.
All right.
That's what.
All right, everybody. Thanks to Big Net for Freeman for holding it down for us. Good to see you, Jackie. Come on.
What's going on, brother? How you doing today?
As good as could be expected. Just is if you can't be there, it's good to be able to watch it live remotely. So I was glad to get to check some of that out, and I know as were many of our viewers. And word is it that Abdus is running around down there as well?
yeah, I wasn't feeling great today, so we were going to go. So like this is the period of time in between taping for the show by any means necessary, where it's just in between morning and afternoon segments. So usually if we have something to do, we try to scoot out and do it at this time, and we had planned to both go down there, but I wasn't feeling great today. And he was just like, well, they need me down at the protest and I got to go. So you'll be all right. Right.
There it is. And we're glad you at least, appear to be, holding strong. Sorry you weren't 100%.
Yeah, I'm reminded that I'm not 25 anymore on
Yeah,
days like this.
I'm reminded of that every 30 to 60 seconds. Just, yeah. Anyway, just real quick, want to remind everybody that at 2:00 today, we're talking with Professor Dylan Rodriguez about his new book, White Reconstruction, which seems to dovetail nicely with what we've been doing here so far this morning, helping, covering the Black Alliance for Peace rally. Any thoughts in particular about what's going on down there this morning and why it's important, not only that we support Haiti's independence and liberation, but why even maybe Black Power media need to be involved in trying to cover and support that work?
Yeah, I mean the relationship to Haiti that Africans in America have, it really is an irrevocable bond. Aside from several people at the rally pointed out, including in the recording from Mumia, that Haiti was a place of refuge for escaped enslaved people, and Indians and Native Americans who left the colonies because of white supremacist settler colonial violence and repression, but also the connection to the struggle for Haiti's independence was also always felt here in the U.S. colonies among that enslaved population of people. I mean, there were incidents as early as like 1790 or 1800 where there were uprisings and rebellions in U.S. cities like in Philadelphia and in New York City, where free Africans and enslaved Africans were saying, look, if they don't give us our freedom, we're going to give them Saint Domingo, which was what Haiti was. And so, that scared, the white power structure, and not just, the slave owners, but also just white folks in society, because they equated Haiti with not an independence movement, which is what the colonists claimed they were also involved in, but it represented just Black violence to them. And it was just unconscionable that Black people should have the same level of freedom that they did. So you had this attitude in the colonies that not only did the U.S. government not recognize Haiti as an independent nation for 54 years, but they were a direct threat to the persistent, to the maintenance of slavery, to the point that slave codes became more brutal. There were additional laws passed with additional punishments for enslaved people who ran away. There was more coordination among slave and free states to recapture enslaved people and send them back down to, slave states. And, that attitude continued throughout, even past the end of enslavement, to where we see the punishment, the continued punishment of Haiti for gaining their independence against white supremacist colonialism and dominance, from France continuing to tax Haiti to the Clintons and their exploitation of the Haitian population through, suppressing their minimum wage to keep the profits high for private corporations and, non-government entities, funneling billions of dollars in aid that was supposed to go to Haiti, that went to a bunch of non-Haitian companies after, the massive earthquake. So, U.S. imperialism and the hatred of Black independence movement and the punishment of Haiti, not just by France, but also by the United States, it just continues. And this recent interloping of the United States through the OAS in Haiti's electoral processes and their democratic electoral processes, to me, it's just another expansion of that. It is a holdover from the white resentment of the Haitian Revolution altogether.
Well, let's, we got Pan African Community Action is checking in for us. Let's see what's happening at the rally with the latest real quick.
You bet.
That's why we're here today, to connect with the African people that are trying to liberate themselves too here in the heart of the empire and also in Haiti, because we have the same common enemy. And that is why we're here today. And I'm also calling on my people to wake up and open their eyes to see the connections of what's going on right now and see how we need to also stand up from our chairs and walk here today to support the African people of Haiti. So also, it's important to, speaking of the colonized history of Bolivian territory, it's important to mention that all these events happen on a history that shows us that the Bolivian state was never a free state for the indigenous peoples. It's always been a neo-colonial state. Since its inception, Bolivian indigenous people have never truly been free and liberated. And that is something that till today, not many people, including in the Bolivian diaspora and in Bolivian history in Bolivia, talk about. We don't talk about that. We talk about certain independence from Queens, and this triggering statue right next to me, of course, but we don't talk about that the rightful owners of the land in which the Bolivian state was founded have never been liberated. And that struggle is still ongoing. And that struggle is the connection, because that struggle is constantly fighting the forces of US imperialism, constantly fighting the forces of neo-colonialism in Bolivia. And it's important to remember that just recently, in the 60s and 70s, Bolivia went through a period of brutal military dictatorships with thousands of people dead, thousands of people in prison and exiled. That period is important to remember because during that period, fascism and liberal ideology in Bolivia were explicitly married and went hand in hand. But then came neoliberalism, as the brother was talking about, and that was hidden. But the neoliberal period in Bolivia in the 80s was even just as brutal as the military period in Bolivia. So that is important to connect, because now the Bolivian territory, the territory's history, is still being constructed under those foundations, the colonial foundations. The Mass Party that during 14 years tried really hard to dismantle some of these systematic colonial forces that enabled the imperial, the U.S. imperialism to go into and dominate the land, but still didn't manage to do so because there's always servants, a minority of oligarchs in Bolivia that serve as U.S. imperialists in the land. So until today, we had to go through the traumatic events of 2019 with almost 30 Aymara and Quechua people dead at the hands of a fascist, racist president and interior minister that were supported by the US government and the OAS. And that is why we're here, and that is why we also believe that we need to dismantle the systems that are in place and have been in place for decades to promote and to push the US imperialist and white supremacist agenda across so-called the Americas and the Caribbean. And also, before I finish these connections, I also want to mention the other connection that impacts directly my community here in the US. It is the forced migration. The OAS creates the conditions of forced migration. The OAS is what enables the puppets in Honduras, Nicaragua, Haiti, Bolivia, Peru, Ecuador, you name it. All the right-wing capitalist, fascist, neoliberal, neo-colonial U.S. puppets get in power because the OAS intervenes in elections and manipulates narratives. So those puppets create the conditions, the inhumane conditions that force people to migrate this way. So when empire goes ahead and incarcerates, it puts children in cages, which is the most anti-democratic thing a government can do. If we think about it in the current state of events, just only speaking about the migrant population. So what the empire is doing is putting Zapotec children in cages, is putting Maya people in cages, is putting Quiche people in cages, is putting Cachiquel people in cages. So it's putting the indigenous population that is flocking the inhumane conditions that the US empire creates in their homelands. So that is why we need to make also that connection and raise awareness that those children in cages are not just migrants, they're the rightful owners of this land. So also, and to finalize, of course, deportation, inhumane deportation is another link where we come together with the African people of Haiti, because systematically the US has been deporting African people and Haitians at an increased more rate and without due process and in inhumane conditions for a long time. And like our brothers and sisters already said, it doesn't matter who's in power, those deportations keep rolling and rolling and rolling. And that's the kind of stuff that we need to fight back, because the longer we let that be normalized, and the longer we let that be included into the so-called liberal democracy, then the longer that's going to be a way for controlling and oppressing our peoples. So thank you and appreciate it very much. People of Bolivia, Aymara people, Quechua people, in solidarity with the African peoples of Haiti. Thank you.
Thank you so much for drawing those connections and uplifting the African, you said? Yes, fuck ICE, abolish the OAS, abolish the United States, abolish the United Nations, abolish the pan-European forces. Dope. Thank y'all for sticking around. You know, this is really, we're here to show solidarity, but we're also here to speak directly to folks who are in this country to be educated so that you can go back to your communities and take action. So next up, we have Leo. Code Pink.
Thanks so much. My name's Leonardo. I'm with Code Pink. And I'm also from Venezuela. So for me, it's really special to be out here today in solidarity with Haiti. Because, as I think people have mentioned, including Mumia speaking through the words of Frederick Douglass, Venezuela and Haiti go way back, right? Haiti helped Venezuela become liberated from Spanish colonial rule. Haiti, and it wasn't just the ideological and moral support of the example of the Haitian Revolution. It was ships, it was soldiers, it was weapons that went down to South America to fight Spanish forces and help freed all of South America. And in Venezuela, we understand, at least those of us who are revolutionaries understand, that we have a historic debt with Haiti, that without Haiti, we wouldn't have been free. And so now it's our mission to help Haiti become free as well. Part of the way we started paying off that debt was through this program called Petrocaribe, which was a way for, money to be sent into Haiti for development projects, for housing for poor people, for actual people. And when I say development, I mean like actual community empowerment and development, not like the sort of development we see here in this city that destroys communities, right? And so what happened with Petrocaribe? Moise and Martelly before him started stealing the money from Petrocaribe, and the Haitian people were incredibly upset. They went out into the streets in 2019. They're still out in the streets talking about Petrocaribe and where the Petrocaribe money is. And then in 2019, Moise totally betrayed Venezuela. He came here to the OAS and he said, you know what, I'm going to start recognizing this US installed puppet who calls himself president named Juan Guaido. And what happened when he did that? The Haitian people went out on the streets again because they understand that we're one people in all of Latin America and the Caribbean that has to stick together against empire, because if we're not all free, then none of us can be free. I'm glad Gustavo mentioned the statue. I mean, this is a woman who financed slavery, who financed genocide. And look behind us, you'll see two more statues there, say North America and South America. Where's Mesoamerica? Where's the Caribbean? Right? This institution is a total relic. It's a dinosaur. It should be extinct. It was born out of the Monroe Doctrine, born out of the Cold War, born out of a U.S. need to control the entire hemisphere, and that's how it's historically been used. About 10 years ago, under the Obama administration, Secretary of State John Kerry sent a scathing letter decrying the OAS because of supposed corruption and wanting major changes at the OAS. And it wasn't that the OAS was corrupt. I mean, it's always been corrupt. That wasn't the problem. The problem was that the OAS was losing influence in Latin America and the Caribbean, and other institutions like UNASUR, the Union of South American Nations, SELAC, the Community of Latin American Caribbean States, Petrocaribe, and others were taking more and more of the space that used to belong to the OAS and the US. So what happened then? There were through successive administrations, Obama, Trump, and now Biden, you had guys like Marco Rubio and Bob Menendez in the Senate attempt to destroy these institutions. They attempted to destroy Petrocaribe, and now you have the OAS is stronger than ever. As Gustavo said, they overturned an election in Bolivia, leading directly to a coup. They're trying to do the same thing right now in Ecuador. We're going to have to see what happens in about a month when they have presidential elections. They're a huge part of the whole plot against Venezuela, the hybrid war against Venezuela. And in Haiti, as we all know, Haiti's been the experiment ground for all of what the U.S. has done elsewhere. I mean, you had Martelly, the former president before Moise. He came third in elections and somehow ended up being the president. So we have to stand together to continue to denounce U.S. imperialism, continue to denounce the OAS, continue to denounce the core group, which is made up of the UN, Brazil, France, Canada, Spain, so many countries that think they have an interest in Haiti, when really what their interest is extracting wealth out of Haiti and keeping Haiti down and making sure that the example of the Haitian Revolution dies, but it's not going to die because people like us are here and because Haitians are out on the streets en masse, demanding their freedom, demanding their true liberation, and we're going to stick with them the entire way. Thank you very much.
Woo, thank you. Nope. Thank you so much for drawing those connections. And as folks talk about Bolivia or Venezuela, understand there's also African people in those lands who are fighting for their self-determination. There's African people all over Latin America, all over the Caribbean, all over the world. So we're also fighting, multiple forms of systematic systems. So we have two more speakers. But we're going to give just 1 second for Sean Blackman to come up, but we want the ASL interpreter to get a drink. We're just going to play is there a song? Just so that the ASL interpreter can take a couple minute break. Y'all running out of time. Thank y'all again so much for coming out here. It's too late. We're gonna bring up Sean, and then we're gonna bring up Eugenia, and then we'll close out with some Haitian music.
All right, thank you so much, man. How y'all feeling?
How y'all feeling? It's a beautiful day to struggle. I know it's a little chilly, but make no mistake, we're very much in the dead heat of an all-out assault on democracy and people's rights in Haiti, in the United States, and indeed all across this earth. My name is Sean Blackman, and I'm here representing the ANTA Coalition, which stands for Act Now to Stop War and End Racism. And I want to thank our comrades at the Black Alliance for Peace for continuing to organize actions like today and like we've seen in past weeks here in DC and across the country in solidarity with Haiti. And it's so important that we do that. Haiti is such a unique place in world history. You're talking about a country that has been punished nonstop for centuries on end because it had the audacity to be the first free Black republic. And it has been attacked ever since. And this is why Black Americans, those of us whose ancestors were enslaved in this land, have had a historic affinity for Haiti. There are some historians that say that Denmark Vesey, when he was planning his slave rebellion in South Carolina, some say he was in correspondence with then Haitian President Jean-Pierre Boyer, that if that rebellion was successful, then Vesey, Gullah Jack, and other Black Americans would find asylum in Haiti. This is a part of that historical connection in Haiti as a symbol of liberation from enslavement. And speaking of Jean-Pierre Boyer, it was under Boyer where France, in a historic act of gangsterism, demanded that Haiti pay them, I believe it was 150 million francs at that time, basically stealing reparations from Haiti to pay France back for what it lost when Haiti freed itself. Imagine that. Imagine an enslaver telling the formerly enslaved, you owe me for what I lost after I could no longer exploit you on this level. And most popular figures put that money today over $20 billion. And what is France's response to this? When you had someone like Aristide, who was brave enough to go before the French government and say, you all stole this from us. It has impacted us ever since. We demand it back. France sounded just like the United States sound when we want to talk about slavery here. Oh, it was so long ago. Oh, no one is alive now that was a part of that. Completely ignoring how the robbery of slavery, the robbery of colonialism and imperialism and different successive neoliberal comprador leadership have robbed the Haitian people of so much. And that's precisely what we see under Jovenel Moïse. Jovenel Moïse is nothing but the latest iteration of what we saw under the Duvaliers and under Michel Martelly, the brutal robbery, exploitation, and brutality against the Haitian people with the support of the United States. This is the hypocrisy of the U.S. empire that claims it's about democracy, right? That claims it's about free speech rights, but yet it supports a dictatorship in Haiti. Well, how can we call it a dictatorship? Jovenel Moïse rules by decree. And when you rule by decree, that means your word is law. There is no more undemocratic form of government than to have the word of an individual be considered law. And not only does the United States support dictatorship in Haiti, it supports the dictatorship of the unelected Gulf monarchies. We know that this country cares nothing for democracy. If it did, we wouldn't be here. You know what I mean? And so when we see the brutality against the Haitian people in the streets, I can't help but think about what we've been going through right here in DC. Just this summer, DC police, federal troops, beating people, gassing people, hitting people with, shooting people with rubber bullets, hitting them with stun grenades, tear gas. Democrat and Republican in DC and across this country have tried to crush political dissent. And so it's no surprise that the U.S. supports what we're seeing in Haiti right now. This is why we must fight. And don't let anyone ever tell you that the Black liberation struggle is diluted because we talk about what's happening in Haiti, because we talk about what's happening in Nigeria, in Senegal, and wherever we see African and other poor working oppressed people struggling in this country. It's because our struggles are connected. This ain't just some kumbaya feel-good thing. We understand that we can never be free as long as they are in chains. And it's so important that we look at what the U.S. has been doing in the Caribbean. It's not talked about a lot. We remember that Mike Pompeo did a whole little tour through the Caribbean. Remember that? He was the first Secretary of State in U.S. history to visit Guyana. Now, why is that? It's not because he wanted to have a discussion about the works of Walter Rodney. No. It's because we know that not only does Guyana have a whole lot of oil they just found, but also from a geopolitical standpoint, Washington wanted to see how they could finagle Guyana against Venezuela and other independent thinking countries in the Caribbean. And there was resistance to this. This resistance, there was a boycott of these talks that was led by Mia Mottley, the Prime Minister of Barbados and the head of CARICOM. So as time goes on, we see that the Caribbean, a largely Black region as we know, is pushing back against this neocolonialism, against U.S. imperialism. And just as we struggle against white supremacy and capitalism here in this country, we know that imperialism is in fact the highest form of capitalism, and therefore we must destroy it if we're going to free ourselves. Thank you so much for listening. Please, if you're willing to fight for it, and let your motto be resistance. Thank you.
Woo! So we have one and last speaker, Eugenia, who I'm going to have her introduce herself. Has a radio station that speaks directly to Haitian folks in DC, and I'm sure her words are going to be lovely. Give it up for Eugenia.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Eugenia Charles. I am the host of Combit Latai on WPFW every Saturday from 9 to 10 p.m. Yes, thank you. Thank you for having me this afternoon, and thank you for coming out in solidarity to support the Haitian people. We are going through a lot in Haiti right now. And I want to say that people united will never be defeated. 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 Together we can do it. Together we can make it. Imperialism has to end. Neocolonialism has to end. Discrimination has to end. Human rights started in Haiti. On January 1st, 1804, Dessalines said anybody who's a slave can step in here and be a free man, a free woman, a free person. So they cannot teach us about human rights. They cannot tell us what human rights is about. We know how it is. We started it. So today, when we watch the United States, when we watch France, when we watch Canada, trying to enslave our people, and it is not just Haitians, it's about enslaving the less fortunate. It is about enslaving all Black people across the globe. Haiti is being punished because we became an independent nation. We said, to let us buy all that is in Haiti. People united will never be defeated. People united will never be defeated. People united will never be defeated. We got to stick together. Since Biden took office, over 1,000 people has already been deported to Haiti. And when he went to Miami, he got on his knees and says, I apologize and I will stand with the Haitian people. Hypocrisy.
These people do not know how to tell the truth. And today in Haiti, we have a de facto government. His mandate finished on February 7, 2021. But because Washington want to get our resources, they want to get our natural resources that are on the ground, they want to keep him in office. Because they want a constitution that will allow them to buy lands in Haiti. Our original constitution said no. Foreigners cannot buy lands in the country. The land belongs to the people. People united will never be defeated. People united will never be defeated. You will not, yes, you will not get freedom. You have to take it. You have to fight for it. You have to fight for it. No one's gonna give you freedom. So the Haitians are fighting to get their freedom. We did it in 1804, and today our fight is for economic freedom. Because we paid the French 150 million francs in gold, which is what, about $20 billion today. We can do development with that. But you have to also understand, when the US came in 1915, they also took our gold reserve. It's still sitting in the Bank of New York, which is now Bank of America. So no, Haiti is not a poor nation. We have made to be poor. We are entitled, the poorest nation in the Western Hemisphere. We are not the poorest nation in the Western Hemisphere. I want people to stop using that word. We are not the poorest nation in the Western Hemisphere. They are forcing our people to go to Chile, to go to Brazil, because they want more slaves. You have to understand, a successful Haiti is a successful nation for all the Black world around, especially the continent, Mother Africa. When our resources cannot be used to provide education for Haitians, that is not resources. When you allow another nations to come, when you look at what's happening in Africa, it is no different than what they want to do in Haiti. Blood Diamond, if you have not watched it, go watch it. You will understand. Today in Cité Soleil, we have gangs. Village de Dieu, we have gangs. The weapons are coming from this country. Supposedly, they have a U.S. embargo on arms that should not be traveling to Haiti. But every week, in the private courts that is being controlled by the 1% bourgeoisie, controlling 48% of the country's wealth, are bringing the weapons in to kill the people so they can get access to the land. People united will never be defeated. A people united will never be defeated. We have to stick together. It is no matter what color you are. It is standing for our rights. It is standing for our children to get access to education. Let me tell you, privatization in Haiti is the same privatization right here in America. When you cannot get good hospital, you cannot get proper funding for good school in your neighborhood. We are going to the same challenges. We are asking for clean water. There are many parts right here in the United States, but they do not have good water providing to the people. People united will never be defeated. The people united will never be defeated. We have to look at imperialism for what it is. It needs to end, and it needs to end right now. Jovenel Moïse needs to leave the palace. We are not asking the Americans to come take Jovenel to go somewhere else. We want him to go to jail, because his government has embezzled over $4 billion that was supposed to provide development for Haiti. Let's talk about the OAS. Let's talk about the OAS. They're supposed to provide support democracy. What democracy? Every time we have an election in Haiti, the OAS is there to observe them. They always combine their efforts with the US, representing the US, determining who should be president. You cannot have democratic election when the international community is deciding the result of your election. That is not democracy. When the Secretary General of this institution can go to Haiti on a private trip, get money from the Haitian president, and come back and says, I want to represent the body, that was a lie. Democracy is about people's power. One man, one vote, not selectocracy. You see it happening here. We have an electoral college. You know what happened. You see what happened. We go out and vote.
and then they decide who's gonna be president. In Haiti, it is one man, one vote. But right now, it is like the electoral college in Haiti because the Haitian people go vote. The embassies called the core groups. They decide who's going to be president. We want the core group out of Haiti. We want the core group out of Haiti. They are nothing but a union of ambassadors representing neocolonialism and imperialism. They need to go and they need to go now. We are not asking for their permissions. We simply want to be able to breathe. We simply want to be able to survive. We simply want to find the resources to support our children. They will tell you Haiti gets the most aids from the United States. What aid? What aid are you talking about? What development are you talking about? When you have USAID in Haiti, if you go to the neighborhoods where they are working, they are work. They will tell you they do reforestation. But the tree that they plant, eucalyptus trees, suck the nutrients out of the ground, preventing us from being able to plant. What kind of resources are you talking about? Aid. What aid? When you send aid to a country, you bring your own NGOs, run the money through them, don't provide the money to the government. 1 penny goes to the government, 1 penny cannot do development, people. People united will never be defeated. A people united will never be defeated. People every day teach our children, our grandchildren, your brothers and sisters, take the message. Haitians are fighting for their lives. All they what they're looking for is true participatory democracy. 1 man, 1 vote. Right now, the US is supporting a constitutional referendum. That constitution has been drafted, sitting at the World Bank for quite some time. We have a lot of gold in Haiti. We have petroleum. We have a lot of natural resources that can help us. But they want access to the resources. Why are they against Maduro? For the same reason they are against Haiti. Why did the US support Martelly and Jovenel Moïse to embezzle over $4 billion from the Petro-Caribe Fund? Because guess what? If Venezuela do development in Haiti, development that allows the people to move forward, it will make the US with what? Okay? Let's understand the political strategy that they are doing. They will not allow a good friend to come help Haiti. You have to understand Venezuela and Haiti are like mothers and daughters. It's mothers and daughters relationship. So it was automatic when Jovenel voted against Venezuela, the Haitian people went out and said, no, that's not our vote. Because we, the people, we stand with Venezuela. We stand with Maduro. So today, as you are looking at Biden and Ms. Harris, unfortunately, they need to understand, they need to respect democracy. If they are respecting democracy, they need to also understand the people need to be able to survive. The people need the resources of Venezuela to take care of Venezuela, not to come here to the US. Just as the Haitians need their resources to stay in Haiti to support the Haitian people. We want good education. No Haitians want to leave Haiti. They are living because US policies have been depleting the nation. Because US policies keeping the people in bondage. And we want freedom and we want it now. We want the US to leave Haiti alone. Could you imagine Haiti is the poorest nation? They have the biggest embassies in Haiti. For what? When they are digging our land, go ask them what are they taking. Why is that? The US ambassador in Haiti is acting just like the governor, not respecting the Geneva Convention, telling her where her wall and her line should be. People united will never be defeated. A people united will never be defeated. A people united will never be defeated. When you hear democracy, people power. Let's not forget that. We need to respect that. We need to push for it no matter where we are. Today it is difficult. From the time Jovenel has been in power, a lot of people have died. Over 1,000 people have died so far. In Port-au-Prince alone, we had 10 massacres. With that 10 massacres, 343 people died. 98 others disappeared. We don't know what happened with them. 251 children became orphans. That is not democracy, people. That's not democracy. So when the U.S. stand and say we want Jovenel to organize election this year, the Haitian people say no. His mandate is over, they want him out. His mandate is over, they want him out. We don't want election with Jovenel. We want to have a transitional government that will do the people's business for the people, not for the U.S. government. Because Haiti still belongs to Haitians. Right. A people united will never be defeated. A people united will never be defeated. A people united will never be defeated. We want democracy and we want it now. We want democracy and we want it now. We want democracy and we want it now. We want the U.S. out now. We want the U.S. out now. We want the U.S. out now. Free Haiti, free Venezuela, free all the oppressed people. Thank you.
Yes, yes. Thank you so much. Yeah, so we're about to close out with a couple chants and then we're going to play music. Thank y'all so much for coming out. We have Netva.
Good afternoon, everybody. We're going to try a few of these chants, and we're going to do them as they were in my head when I tried to put them together. As we,
Hands off Haiti! Hands off Haiti!
Hands off Haiti! Hands off Haiti! Hands off Haiti!
Hands off Haiti!
You wrote that one well, Netva. You wrote that one well.
So this one is, excuse my pronunciation for all the Creole speakers. How about dictate? U.S. out of Haiti. How about dictate? U.S. out of Haiti.
How about
Dictate?
U.S. out of Haiti.
How about dictate?
U.S. out of Haiti.
How about dictate?
U.S. out of Haiti.
Oh, how about dictate?
U.S. out of Haiti.
Dictate?
U.S. out of Haiti.
How about dictate?
U.S. out of Haiti.
How about dictate?
U.S. out of Haiti. U.S. out of Haiti. U.S. out of Haiti. U.S. out of Haiti.
And then we go from Congo to Haiti. All Africans unite. Self-determination is a human right. From Congo to Haiti, all Africans unite.
You're right.
From Congo to Haiti,
Africans unite. Self-determination is a human right.
from DC to Haiti, all Africans unite.
To Haiti, Africans unite.
Self-determination is our human right. From Congo to Haiti, all Africans unite. From Congo to Haiti, all Africans unite.
Self-determination is a human right.
Yes, you know, with chance, you gotta come here like at 11:30 and then practice it together a couple times. But it's all right because we just move with what the Spirit tells us to move. So there is no right or wrong beat, despite what I said. We're gonna play some music.
Okay, the song you're about to hear is from Jean-Jean Roosevelt. It's a letter to his wife. It was after the Secretary General from the OAS went to Haiti and did the meeting, which was inappropriate. So he wrote a letter so he could express his opinion about the position of the OAS because he wanted to make sure to tell them that is not democratic.
Okay. Well, all right, we're about to close out here. So that was the U.S. Black Alliance for Peace, Black Alliance for Peace demonstration at the Organization of American States in solidarity with the people of Haiti. And so you heard from a number of speakers there, and it was sounding pretty informative. We tried to pan the crowd, and it was about we kind of ended up with a little over 50 people maybe. and sometimes, I didn't count them, but thank you. Tune in.
Hey,
Stay tuned
thank you, Net, for doing this. Thank you, Net, and to all of your crew down there. It looked great. It sounded great on our end. We appreciate you, man.
Great, thank you. Black Power.
Black Power.
Africa unite. Africa will be saved.
What up, Abdus?
Yeah.
What up, Erica? Yeah. All right, good people. No compromise, no retreat. We appreciate them. Again, thanks to all of you out there in the comments and chats watching live. We had a good, strong crowd in attendance here as well. Definitely appreciate you, and want to definitely extend our thanks and solidarity to Black Alliance for Peace and all the good people doing all that work down in Washington. We'll continue to try to support them. Like and share the video. All revenue generated from this live, did we say 50-50 or all of it goes to BAP? I can't honestly remember what the arrangement is, but you're supporting both BAP and Black Power Media. So we definitely, I think we said 50-50, but I will double check that. Whatever it is, it's all good. So your likes and your shares and your views of this will help build these organizations and support them, at least to the extent that we can. And please come back in just a few more minutes, because Dr. Dylan Rodriguez is going to join us for a discussion of his new book on white reconstruction. So it's a perfect, almost perfect segue from people in the streets to people in academia doing very similar work. And so we look forward to that. So again, thanks to everybody for tuning in. Again, big shout out to Black Alliance for Peace and everybody doing all that work. And of course, we want to stand in solidarity with Haiti. Shout out to the Venezuelan collective that showed up down there as well. And everybody looking for solidarity in this global international struggle for liberation. All right. So anyway, we'll be back in a few, just 8 minutes, right back here at Black Power Media for a discussion with Dylan Rodriguez about white reconstruction. So quick bio break, as they say, and we'll catch you right back here in just a few minutes. So as Fred Hampton used to say to you, we say peace if you're willing to fight for it, like we are clear Black Alliance for Peace is. And we'll be back here in just a minute right here in Black Power Media. Peace, everybody.